Welcome everybody to PuppetConf. Big hello to everyone who's watching either recorded or live streamed, and thank you all for being here, for spending your valuable breakout time in this session. I hope you think we have some good things to say and can learn something from it. This is Collaboration and Empowerment, Driving Change in Infrastructure with Culture. This is a picture of me speaking last year at PuppetConf. Now with less flannel and less badge around my neck. My name is Martin Jackson. I am an enterprise technical expert at Walmart. I go by Mjolnir40K on Slack and on Twitter. And we at Walmart Technology are obsessed with teching better so that we can help our customers shop better, pay better, and ultimately live better. Over the last year, we've launched a number of new applications and services for you, our customers, including Walmart Pay, our mobile payment application. We've added over 12 million products to our online marketplace. We're transitioning our entire IT culture to DevOps so that we can move faster to serve you better. All of these things are examples of strides that we have taken in our effort to help us do one thing: serve our customers. And after over 17 years working in Walmart Technology, I can tell you that this is a more exciting time to be a Walmart technologist than ever before. This is a little recap, timeline-wise, of our journey. We began our configuration management journey in August of 2013. We started the journey and we haven't stopped believing. Yes, we've heard the song a couple times, I'm sure. We started with zero configuration management in August of 2013. We started deploying open source Puppet using Foreman as our node classifier in May of 2014. In August of 2014, our vice president challenged us to get Puppet into all of our store footprint by the end of October 2014. And we were successful in accomplishing that challenge with 30,000 nodes under Puppet development by October of 2014. We made the decision to move to Puppet Enterprise after that, and we're going to talk a little bit about the reasons we chose to go with Puppet Enterprise. So we started the migration. We started our Puppet 3 to Puppet 4 migration, and we started changing some aspects of our workflow and deployed our first production PE nodes in May of this year. Our first Windows nodes were deployed in production in July of 2016. Our PE conversion from Foreman and open source Puppet to PE was complete in September. And I'm happy to say that we have successfully decommissioned our entire Puppet 3 and Foreman infrastructure as of October 3rd. Here are some numbers for our deployment in terms of what overall we are managing. And because of the delightful process that we have to go through to get presentations like this approved for public consumption, I am delighted to say that these numbers are horrifically out of date and incorrect, as large as they may appear. The slide says we're at 49 million total resources. We're actually over 52 million total resources today. The slide says 53,000 total nodes. We are at 63,000 total nodes today. And of those nodes, almost 9,000 of them are Windows nodes in production. The average resources per node number has in fact gone down, though, as a result of our Windows deployment. And that's because we are deploying just the agent and minimal settings to our Windows nodes, and we're going to grow that Windows deployment, increase the size of the catalog, find new things to manage, and so on as we go on through the process. So our average resources per node in actuality is closer to 770 now instead of 863, but we'll get it back there soon enough. I would also like to take a moment now and talk about our code base. We have 202 individual modules deployed in our Puppet files. And of those 202 modules that we have deployed, 47 of them we are pulling directly from the Forge. I would like to take this time to thank each and every one of you who contributes to the Forge and who has published modules. We could not have done what we do without the effort and labor that you have invested in your modules and the effort that Puppet has put in to supporting the Forge and making the Forge a service that we can all use. Thank you very much. One of the numbers that I'm proudest of in our entire deployment is the speed at which we've been able to move. Since we moved to our federated repository workflow, we have deployed, on average, almost 7 changes per day to our infrastructure in production using Puppet. That's a good number, considering that when we first started our configuration management journey, we thought that we might be able to do one change a week using Puppet. I'm happy to tell you our users thought that wasn't good enough, and they pushed us to do it faster and to do more. And right now, we're basically pushing change on an as-needed, as-desired basis. There are some days we do a lot more than 7 changes a day. This can be a little stressful, but overall, it's gone pretty well. So why did we decide to move from Puppet open source to Puppet Enterprise? Was it Foreman? What was the deal? Well, I'm here to tell you that I have the utmost respect for Foreman as a project. Foreman is a great piece of software maintained by a great set of people. Foreman is a very active and engaged upstream community. The people who work on Foreman are very helpful, very open to change, and very interested in helping their users and their customers. But we realized that in order to provide the top-level support that we needed to be able to provide for our Windows deployments, we wouldn't be able to do that with Puppet 3. Foreman wasn't ready to move to Puppet 3 when we needed to, wasn't ready to move past Puppet 3 when we needed it to support Puppet 4. Today, Foreman does support Puppet 4 completely. As of the most recent release, 1.13 added support for structured facts, which was the last thing it was missing. So I'm not saying anything bad about Foreman. I know the upstreams, I like the upstreams, and I still consider them friends. We've learned quite a lot in our journey since 2013. Now, is it that we started out in 2013, all of our plans went exactly as we expected them to, and everything that we did, everything that we thought we would do, and everything that we needed to do was exactly everything that would happen in great order? It wasn't like that, and it's never like that in any organization of any size. We had to learn as we went. When we were given the store challenge in 2014, we didn't even know if the Puppet system could scale that far. We were hopeful, but we didn't know for sure. We benefited greatly from the ability to learn and practice and adjust. And that's a lot, the culture that created that is a lot of what we're here to talk about, because we've learned a lot from our mistakes. Here are some particularly dumb things that we've done in our deployment. When we first started down the configuration management journey, we thought, hey, Puppet handles OS native packaging. Let's force our application teams to deploy RPMs. No. We didn't have the necessary infrastructure to build RPMs for them, and we didn't have the political clout to make them do that. And also because of technically the way RPMs own and manage files, it just wasn't the right thing. It was a dumb idea, and we shouldn't have tried it. When we started out with our workflow, Our workflow was subversion-based. My name is Martin Jackson. I'm a recovering subversion user. The subversion merge workflow was so painful that literally a month before we went into production with our foreman deployment, the team said, "Oh my God, we have to do something else. I don't care. We'll learn Git if we have to." We did decide to learn Git, and it was one of the best decisions we made as a team. Even though it was very late in the production planning and in the deployment, we had to change a lot of documentation. We had to change all of our communication with our users, but it was totally worth it. So we were off Subversion. We were now on Git, but we had a monolithic Git repository, and we were deploying a branch per environment. And if you've ever tried to do a monolithic Git repository workflow, you know that it is very difficult to merge changes. And it's practically impossible to back out changes. Not practically impossible, but there's a lot more drama involved than necessary. And you can, if you're not careful, merge more than you mean to. And we had that happen on us quite a few times. So we've made mistakes, but we've been able to learn from them. And that is vital. We've learned a lot in a couple of related areas, in technology and in culture. And the technology and the culture aspects of a deployment like this really interrelate quite a lot. In technology, one of the things we've learned is best summed up in this statement that I found on the internet, but I cannot, for the life of me, attribute it properly. That bothers me, being from a liberal arts background. You always cite your sources. I cannot find who originally said this, so whoever it was a genius. Functionality is an asset. Code is a liability. You want to be able to do cool stuff, but the infrastructure that you have to maintain to do that cool stuff is a maintenance burden. You have to maintain that. And so the less infrastructure you can use to maintain that functionality, the better off you are. As a team, we see our responsibility primarily as enabling other teams to get the most out of our Puppet deployment. We want to teach other teams to be able to use Puppet to be more successful in what they do. We don't want to use Puppet just to manage Puppet. And with the breadth and the scope of the different applications and infrastructures and business units that we have at Walmart, it doesn't make sense for a team our size to even try to own everything. And while we're talking about it, most of the team is here today. Not all of it, but most of it. It's great to see you. Thanks for being here, and it's delightful to be at PuppetConf. So, you know, if you want to talk to any of us, this is most of us. Fewer than a dozen people directly manage and operate Puppet in our organization. And that's kind of an important thing, too. It doesn't necessarily take a huge staff to manage a huge deployment. And that's value. Functionality is an asset, code is a liability. We also found ourselves doing some things that were not really value adds in terms of the overall deployment. When we were on open source, we had to build our own versions of the Puppet tools, Puppet itself, Factor, mCollective. We had to write our own Puppet code to manage the Puppet servers, ActiveMQ brokers, PuppetDB, Foreman, the Foreman services, all that stuff. And all those things took time away from enabling our users to be better and accelerate their own journeys with Puppet. And so we saw some value in being able to shift from open source to PE and kind of leverage that functionality instead of having to maintain our own code. And one of the biggest things that we needed to do, and probably the single biggest driver for our migration to PE, was our need to support Windows. We'd gone through quite a lot of at the point at which we decided we needed to support Windows, we'd been reasonably successful with our Linux deployments. We had pursued a separate configuration management strategy for Windows, which had involved using the desired state configuration product and automating PowerShell. We had written our own wrapper around DSC, but we ran into a number of scaling problems when that solution got to 1,500 nodes. We had problems deploying new policy and getting compliance reporting from our in-house solution. We found that it was a lot harder to write enterprise-grade configuration management software than we thought it was. My teammate, Derek Robinson, who's here with us and was actually invaluable in presenting and creating this presentation, came up with a great way of evangelizing what we were trying to do in Puppet for Windows. We call him Puppety. Are you trying to make a node group? For those of you who are around for Office 95, thank you, thank you. We'd been successful with Puppet on Linux. The Windows team saw what we had done with Puppet, and they wanted the same advantages, the same speed, the same flexibility that we were getting too. We knew that we needed to move to Puppet 4 for that. We knew that we needed to be able to use the DSC module. Our strategy for Windows configuration management has always involved DSC. And when Puppet said, we are going to support the DSC module, we are going to allow you to use Puppet Enterprise as a vehicle for configuring driving policy changes in DSC and getting reports of compliance with your DSC configurations. Those are exactly the pain points that we felt, and the scaling considerations as well. Furthermore, we as a configuration management team were chartered with the responsibility of trying to bring together the different systems management practices which had diverged over time within Walmart IT. Puppet had a strong Linuxy flavor, and so that was a little bit off-putting at first to some of our Windows teammates. It's all Linux, it's all Ruby, the slashes go the wrong way in the configuration files, all of that stuff. So that's how, we used Puppety to kind of make it funny and make it fun. But our goal was to have as much visibility across as much of our infrastructure with the fewest number of tools possible. We're not slavish about saying it has to be just one tool, but we'd like it to be just one tool if it can be. And having visibility and the ability to execute change and manage a single workflow across both of our Linux and Microsoft infrastructures is pretty powerful. And that has been very good and very useful for us. So what did we learn in the process of starting with our Windows deployments? We've certainly had our challenges. We had to work out classification and naming standards. That's another old saying in IT. The two hardest things to do in IT are naming standards and cache invalidation. We had to justify and unify a lot of the practices that had diverged between Linux and Windows. And those led to some very interesting conversations. The Windows teams would ask us, well, why are you doing that? And we would say, I don't know, it's always been that way. Sometimes we got good answers, sometimes we didn't. And we've adjusted some of our practices because of the input that we've gotten from our teammates. We accepted that sharing environments was going to lead to certain kinds of cross-pollination that enabled additional risk. Having all of this infrastructure in a single console means that this is one administrative change domain. And potentially, if you make a big change in the one environment, you could affect an awful lot of nodes. And people get angry if you affect an awful lot of nodes in a way that they are not expecting you to. We've had a few of those incidents, not many, but a couple. We accept that as a risk. Technologically, that means that we have to load all the DSC providers on Linux, even though we know we're never going to drive any DSC configuration changes on Linux. I know technically it's possible. It's not really in our roadmap. And similarly, a number of the facts that we had written for the Linux deployment, we had to confine on Windows and go back and maintain that code to make sure that the facts didn't try to do something funky or outrageous or just create a lot of errors on our Windows nodes. So those have been challenges, but we've seen benefits from it. One of the benefits of doing new greenfield deployments in Windows is that we were able to learn from the ability to make full use of Puppet 4 language constructs and also newer Puppet code development patterns such as roles and profiles. We've been able to explore where roles and profiles make sense for us on Windows. We have not fully refactored our Linux code base to use roles and profiles, but we're going to. We're definitely going to. We know that we have work left to do. We still have to improve our test coverage. We have to build an acceptance test framework. Those are things that we are very much looking forward to doing in the next year. And so, if you look at this as a stepwise process, if we had to identify where we are today, I would say that the best representative here for us is the individual carrying the spear. We've certainly made progress. We can see that we've made progress. We feel that we've made progress, and we're proud of what we've done. But we know that we have a lot to do. The big message here is that when you start a configuration management journey, the real work has really only just begun. It's a long-term commitment. There's a lot of work to do. And it's not clear that that work will ever be done. The nature and scope of what operations has to do and what IT operations has to do in the new world is ever-changing and ever-evolving. And it's up to us to keep up with and, if we can, possibly stay ahead of that change. What about culture? What are some of the cultural aspects that have enabled us to do what we've done? The first thing is best summed up by the statement, nothing ventured, nothing gained. It's important when embarking on a journey like this to set expectations appropriately. We knew that we were deploying to our brownfield environment. We knew that we had the potential to break things. It would have been dishonest of us to say, we solemnly swear that we will never, ever do anything that anybody doesn't want us to do. There will be breaks, there will be surprises, there will be things that go bump in the night. We will kick over rocks, and we do not know what we will find under them. One particular example involved us tightening the permissions on a directory that a particular application was using. The directory was mode 777. Everyone could write, everyone could read it. And we found that an application depended on being able to remove files from that directory, which it can't do if the permissions are 755. And the application, of course, did not check that it could successfully remove the files. So we wound up ordering a couple of truckloads of extra merchandise one weekend. That was a fun conversation to have. What could have happened is that we could have been told to stop dead in our tracks. We could have been told, back it out, this is too dangerous, this is crazy, you can't go further. But that's not what happened. We learned from the experience, we improved our communication strategy, the applications team learned to check the exit code on the removal process, and we moved forward. All of that happened about 1.5 years ago, and we're still deploying new nodes. One way to visualize this is to look at it as a cycle. And this cycle starts by trusting in engineers. It's a very key DevOps concept. You have to push responsibility as far down organizationally the stack as you can. And it has to begin with trust in the people who do the work. Trust in engineers is the engine that fuels empowerment. And there's no such thing as freedom when you don't have the freedom to make mistakes. You don't need freedom to follow the rules. You need freedom to break the rules, to bend the rules, to be able to push the edges of the envelope. That's what empowerment means. When you empower people that way, they get passionate. It's amazing how an empowered engineer can behave and can operate when given the opportunity. When you feel that you have a real chance to make a difference yourself, you're really well motivated to make sure that that change happens, and it happens well. And that motivation, that sense of ownership, in turn, leads to great results. I can't tell you how many of our own goals that we thought were crazy and ambitious that we wound up achieving and overachieving just because everybody wanted to do better. Super highly motivated team, very exciting environment to work in. And that, in turn, leadership sees that excitement, that energy, that motivation, and can easily justify further empowerment by looking at the results. Say, well, you know, they said they were going to do it in 2 months. They achieved it 2 weeks early. Let's give them even more freedom. Let's give them even more leeway. Do the things. Do the things. And it's so much fun. I'm proud of my team. It's a great bunch of people to work with. So what recommendations do we have for you today? The most important thing is to commit to the prospect of doing configuration management. Find the smallest thing that you can manage and manage it actively. We have, of all of the nodes that we have deployed now, over 63,000, we do not keep any of them operationally in no-op mode. We do continuous enforcement on all of them all the time. If anything goes in no-op mode, that's a bug, we'll fix it. Puppet's about configuration management. It provides value by configuration observation, but the real value is configuration management. And so we visualize this as a triangle. Look for the thing that is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, that's success, and reward for the smallest risk. For us, that was NTP. We knew that we had systematic problems with NTP. We didn't quantify it well, but there wasn't much risk for us in taking the NTP service and making it, bringing it under Puppet management. And furthermore, the Puppet agent needed the NTP service to be configured correctly in order to operate correctly. So we needed it. It was easy to manage, and there was very little risk in us to do so. And as we built upon NTP, we learned how the Puppet tooling worked. We were able to develop consensus for how to do changes in the future and grow our deployment from there. Another piece of advice is look for synergies. Puppet isn't going to be the only tool in your toolbox when it comes to systems management. Look around within your organization and try to find other teams that are most likely to be helped by Puppet services. Within our organization, we found Satellite and we found SCCM. Because Puppet works so well with native operating system packages, the ability to have reliable and consistently configured repositories was very important for us. Puppet benefited from that, and the other low-level platform operating system teams also benefited from that greatly. And we were also able to leverage that and grow into the systems management space with configuration management of performance agents, monitoring agents, and other things like that. Those were major points of leverage that we were able to use to grow the code base of what we were managing and how. Working with other tools is a great thing because working with other tools in any organization gives you the opportunity to work with other people. And politically, it's so vital if you're going to go through this journey to have people to share the joy and the pain with you. Sometimes things will go bump in the night. You don't want to be on an island by yourself if Puppet makes a change that for some reason causes some unintended side effect. You want to have partners. You want to have friends. You want to have people who will be there with you to help shoulder that burden. And working with other tools gives you the opportunity to find those political allies. Seek out those opportunities. Build your own internal Puppet community. The overall Puppet community within the world, on the Puppet Slack and IRC, is a wonderful model of how your own internal Puppet community can function. I'm so proud to be a Puppet community member. It's so welcoming, and people are so friendly. I try to give back as much as I can. I hang out on the Puppet community Slack as Mjolnir 40K, try to answer questions. It's exciting and engaging to be part of that world. So, takeaways. First, share the journey. Bring other people along with you. You're not in it alone. Number two, nothing ventured, nothing gained. There is real risk. Accept it, understand it, deal with it, set expectations. Number three, start the empowerment, passion, and results cycle. You'll be amazed at what you can get out of it. And as you get used to it, drive that cycle with systems tooling because those are the things that are nearest and dearest to Puppet's heart. We have some time for live questions here. We also have a blog post that goes into some detail about how exactly the store challenge went and kind of the cultural implications of that at puppetconf.techbetter.com. But we have at least 12 minutes for questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Great talk.
Thank you.
You mentioned 60,000 nodes, give or take, being managed now with a team of 12. That's 5,000 nodes per staff. Do you have any sense of nodes per team member that reaches a threshold? That's just napkin math.
It's a community thing. In the way the responsibilities devolve in our organization, we have frontline operations teams for, we have an entire support structure that issues with those nodes percolate through. So in the Puppet space, there are fewer than a dozen of us, but there is a much larger organization that is responsible for the correct and safe operation of all those nodes, according to business unit, according to platform, in those ways. That's a question that is probably going to be unique to different organizations. And so I would say that the total number of people who have something to say about the operational stability of that 60,000, 63,000 and counting nodes now, numbers closer to, with us plus all of the OS platform teams, probably closer to 90. If that helps. Anyone else?
Hi, Martin.
Yeah.
What sort of governance process or decision process do you utilize for determining what should and shouldn't be managed by Puppet?
We largely depend on the subject matter experts that are leaders in their own areas. We push that stuff down as far as we can, and typically it's going to be a senior individual contributor that says, this is how I want my Puppet code to work. Our ideal model has a senior individual contributor learning how to write Puppet code, developing Puppet code for a particular service that that individual is subject matter expert for, and we serve as the integrators and deployers of that code. We do have formal standards, and typically what we'll do is the formal guidelines, the SMEs will be familiar with the formal guidelines. We'll write the Puppet code to configure the service in question in coordination with those formal guidelines, and that's what we deploy to production. Yeah?
I had a question for you. In regards to one of your previous slides, you said that one of the mistakes that you were making previously when you were working from a Subversion to Git workflow, coming to Git, was that you were deploying branches per environment.
Yeah.
What are you doing today in terms of your strategy around that?
The mistake wasn't so much in deploying a branch per environment. We still do that in our R10K and code manager-based workflow today. The mistake was in making that whole repository monolithic. When you're deploying a monolithic Git repository, it is much more difficult to have any kind of effective automated testing process. We couldn't figure out how, theoretically it would be possible. If you're deploying 200 modules in a single branch, you can write hooks that go and look for things that have changed and only run the acceptance tests on the things that have changed. But that winds up being a nasty, snarled mess. We saw that the rest of the Puppet world was moving to the federated model and R10K. And we wanted to be able to have individual repositories for individual modules because one of the problems that we ran into scaling the rate of change was that we had to pipeline everybody's changes into production. And so you get into things where I'm not ready for my change to go yet. I need a week to test this. Someone else is ready to go. Are they blocked on this? Are they not blocked on this? That was the mistake, really, not the branch per environment thing. Good question. Thank you. Eagerly seeking other questions.
What was your sort of time frame for migrating from a monolithic code base to putting it out on a per repository basis?
What was our time frame from migrating from the monolithic workflow to the federated workflow? It took about 2 months. And one of the reasons, that may feel fast, that may feel slow, we had to update all of our documentation and we had to rewind all of the guidance that we had given other teams because they were used to using the old workflow. And we also had to separate all of the modules that were in the conglomerated, the non-federated repo. We had to create new repos for all of them. We had to create testing frameworks for all of them. Thankfully, one of the team members who's here with us wrote a script that did all of that in one angry night. The majority of the time that it took us was to update the documentation and revise the communication that we gave to other teams. Seriously, though, in making the migration from Puppet 3 to Puppet 4, going from the monolithic repository to the federated repository was the single biggest enabler of that. We couldn't have done it otherwise. All right, going once, going twice. Please feel free to read the blog post at puppetconf.techbetter.com. There is the opportunity to ask further questions in writing at this blog post. Thank you very much for your participation.